When I used to live in Monroe in a neighborhood before they removed me out of a neighborhood where I couldn't, cause any problems, there was an old lady that lived across the street from us. And from time to time, my mother would ask her, "How are you doing today?" And the weirdest answer I've ever heard come out of anybody's mouth, she would go, "Oh, Lord, Mrs. Cash, I feel like I've been dragged through torment and beat over the head with a soot bag." I wondered all my life what in the world that looks like, and looking around this morning, I finally see it. It, maybe minus the soot bag, I don't know. But a lot of people look beat up on this morning. And I want you to understand, you do not have to feel that way. First of all, you have to realize who you are. Now, in the days when this country was founded, believe it or not, even the press in those days was slanted and corrupt. They were. And the only place you could go find out what the truth was the house of God. And the pastor's job was to keep you informed, and some of the people in church keep you informed on what was going on in the neighborhood, in the state or the colony, and in the country. And you could rely on what they were saying. I was told early this morning that I need to be completely quiet about what's been going on this week. Well, CNN, ABC, LSD, you name it, they haven't been quiet. No. And neither have the liberal, hand-wringing, coward pastors have not been quiet. They've been applauding this. So all I'm going to say about this before we get into the message is this church and churches like this are the last bit of defense this country has for the truth. And you can bet your life, if those devils get in the White House, they're going to try to, first thing they're going for are the churches. They're going to try to lock down the country, strap a mask on your face, and shut all the churches up. We need to resolve right now, as Solid Rock Baptist Church, that under no circumstances, no matter who shows up to lock us up, we're not going to do it. We're simply not going to do it. When the apostles were ordered not to preach in the name of Jesus, they said we ought to obey God rather than men. And that's what we're going to do as a church. Now, I'm going to tell you something. The days are coming, and it may be here now, that being a Christian is going to cost you something. Won't be no such thing as the Sunday morning Christians no more. You come Sunday morning and you don't do anything else for God the rest of the week. Either you're going to be a full-time Christian or you're going to wind up falling by the wayside. I'm telling you that's the truth. And be prayed up. Good way you can do it is show up on Friday night once in a while and pray with us. But there's going to be a lot more praying in the days to come. Did you know there's more praying in hell this morning than there is in the house of God? You ever thought of that? You know why? Because they know what the truth is. They know what the deal is. But it's too late. And so having said that, I'm going into the message in Acts chapter 9, and I'm going to ask you this question to preface the message. What's it going to take to get your attention? What's it going to take to wake you up? And what's it going to take for you to answer the call of God? A lot of you are saying, well, Dave, I'm in church. I spent 10 years in church. All the while I was running from God. I knew what He wanted me to do. I think out of that whole 10 years, I missed about 2 or 3 Sundays of not being in church. That ain't what God was looking for. He wanted me to be in church, of course He did, but He wanted me to answer my call and do what He told me to do. Let me give you this warning ahead of time. If you don't listen to God and do what He tells you to do, everything you try to do will flop. God ain't going to bless a thing you're trying to do until you listen to Him. God is not making suggestions. He's giving orders. And He wants you to obey Him and follow Him no matter what it is He's telling you to do. And every single soul in here has a calling from God. There's no such thing as being an average Christian or just a Christian. You all have a calling from God if you are saved, whether you know it or not, and most definitely whether you like it or not. I want you to understand that. He doesn't just call preachers. Sometimes He calls you to put a room in your house and go and pray a couple hours a day for everybody else if you're called to prayer. Some of you, He's calling you to be a witness and invite other people to the house of God and tell them what Jesus did for you. Maybe He's calling you to some other service, but He's calling everybody, and there isn't a single soul that is excused from coming to church on Sunday and then forgetting about it the rest of the week. Everybody has a calling. A lot of people ain't going to want to hear this. But I'm telling you from experience and from watching the members of this church and watching what God has done in the lives of a number of you. But if you do not answer His calling, you are destined to drift along the rest of your life doing nothing. And nothing will progress. There will be no growth. And God is not going to bless anything that's going on in your life. You want to get blessed by God? Obey Him. He said to obey is better than any sacrifice you could possibly give Him. The ultimate sacrifice is you. So I'm going to ask you the question before we get started. What will it take? How many downfalls, how many flops, how many near misses with death, how many sicknesses, how many upheavals in your home is it going to take before you listen and say, all right, Lord, I'll do it? Won't you think about that? Because God is not playing. And as these days progress and get progressively worse, His calling will be stronger and stronger and stronger because you are needed as a soldier in the armies of the living God. Time is running out. Answer it now and tell Him, I'll do whatever you tell me to do. And you'll watch things change. There was a young man in the Bible. He was actually the most educated man of his day. If they gave out seminary and college degrees, he'd probably have a dozen doctorates. This young man was a member of the Sanhedrin court. He was pedigreed as a Hebrew from the tribe of Benjamin. He sat at the feet of the most brilliant rabbi of his era by the name of Gamaliel. Actually, a rather good man. Nobody knew Scripture better than this young man. Nobody. Nobody had more authority when it came to teaching and understanding the Scriptures than this young man by the name of Saul. But Saul was running from God. He was going after the people who claimed to be saved and that accepted Jesus as the Messiah. He believed they were enemies of God, and he was going after them tooth and nail. Let's hear what happens to him. Now you got to remember, prior to that, there was a deacon by the name of Stephen who was standing out in the public square telling it like it was, and nobody wanted to hear that. And they got so angry they wanted to stone him and kill him, and they all laid their garments at the feet of this young man, and he was in on it, and he was holding their coats while they were killing Stephen. He was guilty of that. And he felt, because of the authority that he had and the position that he had and the knowledge that he had, that he was doing right going after Christians. May I say, if you are not following Christ, you are opposing Him.
Yes. Amen.
Even as a Christian, you are opposing Him. If you are disobeying Him, you're telling Him He doesn't know what He's talking about when He tells you that He knows what He wants you to do for Him. You're opposing Him. And so it says here in chapter 9 of the book of Acts. And Saul, yet breathing out threatenings and slaughter against the disciples of the Lord, went to the high priest. The church at that time, the synagogues and the temples, they had authority to arrest people. I've often thought it would be kind of cool if the church could arrest people. But it probably would end very badly if I had any say-so in it. I'm sure it would. But back then, they had some authority to do that. And so he went to the high priest and he asked of him letters to Damascus, to the synagogues, arrest warrants. He was going to Damascus, he wanted arrest warrants. That if he found any of this way, anybody that professed Jesus as Lord, whether they were men or women, he might bring them bound unto Jerusalem for trial. He was going to put them on trial, and in those days, mixed with the Roman Empire, that could be a death sentence. Now, for all of you folks that thinks that Romans 13 tells you to obey wicked rulers, may I say that every single one of the disciples but John were executed for being enemies of the state. So that's not what Paul meant when he wrote that. That's not what he was talking about. As a matter of fact, he stated that wicked rulers have disqualified themselves as having a right to rule over you because they were put in as ministers of God for good.
Yeah.
So let's get that out of our head right now. So he was going to arrest people and bind them up and take them to Jerusalem for trial. But God had another plan. Maybe you have been in church all your life. Maybe you're even saved. But you haven't given the one thing that Jesus wants out of you, and that's you. It's you. He wants you, because once he gets that, he has everything that he needs from you. And you may be running from that calling. Not right now, Lord, not right now. Maybe you're like Augustine, one of the early Christians, many centuries ago, and he wrote a lot of books when he finally got saved. But Augustine, his weakness was women. He was the biggest womanizer in the city. He chased women all the time, and he knew he was wrong, and he knew what God was calling him to do, but he had the gall to pray a prayer saying, Lord, make me chaste, but not yet. Maybe you've got something you're doing right now. Maybe it isn't a sinful thing like that. But maybe you're saying, oh God, I'm going to answer the call, but not yet. But you know what? You don't do it on your time. I didn't do it on God's time either, and he showed me. You're going to do it on his time. Once you are saved, you belong to him. People, he bought you with a price. He suffered more than any human being ever suffered and died a horrible death for you and me, so he could buy us back from the slave auction of sin. And once you accept him, it said you're bought with a price, you're bought with the blood of Christ, you're not your own anymore, and it's time to start acting like you belong to him. So here's Saul on his way to Damascus. As he journeyed, he came near Damascus, and suddenly there shined about him a light from heaven, and you can bet it was bright. It was blinding. And what he did is what a lot of people in this church and other churches need to do. This very morning, he fell to the earth. He went right down to the ground. And he heard a voice saying, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? You need to be on your knees before God, and you need to be listening to his voice, because he's calling a lot of you right now. And he's not calling you to make you miserable. He's not calling you to make you unhappy. He's calling you to make you more like him and to make your life fulfilled. There is nothing that can compare with serving God and walking in his will. I don't care what you might come up with. There's nothing to compare to it. And Saul said, who are you, Lord? He knew it was God, but he didn't know the most educated man in his time. He knew all the scriptures. He was the most brilliant teacher. He was, like I said, he served on the Sanhedrin court. He was so respected. And here he is on his knees on a road going, who are you, Lord? How about that? And the Lord said, I am Jesus, who you persecute. It's hard for you to kick against the pricks. That is a long, sharp stick called an ox goad. And they jam it at an ox because he's so stubborn that he won't move. And so they jam that sharp stick at him to make him get up and move. How many of y'all, and don't raise your hands, but how many of y'all feel that poking this morning? You can raise them if you want to be honest. I don't care. But seriously, God is trying to get your attention. He's doing everything he can. He's jamming that, come on, come on, come on, move, 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 and you haven't done it. And we'll tell you something, God will step the heat up when you ignore him the first time, to the point to where if you don't listen, he'll take you home. I know that to be a fact too. And so Saul rather, I keep calling him that, he hadn't been changed to that name yet. And Saul, trembling and astonished, asked this question that you must ask this question this morning. Lord, what will you have me to do? I did it, and I'm glad I did. Boy, am I glad I did. And the Lord simply said to him, arise. Go into the city, and it shall be told you what you must do. Not what you can do, not what you might do. God is a must-do God.
That's right.
A must-do. Remember, you are not your own, and you need to quit living like that. And so the men which journeyed with him stood speechless. They heard the voice, but they didn't see anything, but Saul did. The man he had been hating for so long and killing all of his followers and putting them in prison, there he runs slam into him on the road to Damascus. And that's going to change the game. A little background music there ain't too bad. Did y'all hear that? And so Saul arose from the earth. The first thing you need to do is get on your knees and say, Lord, what would you have me to do? And you listen to him. And then the next thing you do is get up off of your knees and go do it. Don't keep coming to the altar Sunday after Sunday saying, what do you want me to do? And God tells you to do it, and you go right back and you act stupid again for the whole week. Might as well be honest. If you do that, you're stupid. You're welcome. Stop it and follow him. Do what he tells you to do, and then you'll be bringing somebody else to the altar next Sunday. You cannot keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. That does not work. You do what he tells you to do and you'll get results. So Saul arose from the earth, and when his eyes were open, he couldn't see. That light had blinded him. It made him helpless. Now you can bet that that was the one thing that burned Saul up, was that stinking pride of being self-sufficient. I can handle this. I can do this. I don't need nobody. And now he's going to have to be led by the hand like a child. That's got to go, folks. Your pride has got to go. I don't care how pedigreed you are, how degreed you are, how many looks you've got, how much money you've got, what kind of a job. That's all got to be laid at the feet of Jesus. Everything you are and everything you have needs to be laid at the feet of Jesus, and you need to humble yourself like a child. He saw no man, but they led him by the hand and brought him to Damascus. Here was the man that was going to go to the synagogues in Damascus and get arrest warrants for Christians, and now they're leading him by the hand into Damascus, and they're leading him to a Christian's house. And he was 3 days without sight. Neither did he eat or drink. He was so shaken that he fasted. Have you ever been so shaken by something God did in your life that you couldn't eat for a couple of days? Oh, that needs to happen, people. That needs to happen. You need to humble yourself before Him. Whatever you need to do to listen to Him, you need to do it, and you need to do it now. He was so shaken. There was a certain disciple at Damascus named Ananias. That's not the same one that cheated on his giving. And he said to him said the Lord in a vision, Ananias. That's all he did was call out his name. Jesus was the one that did it. And Ananias said, Behold, I am here, Lord. While God is calling on someone else to do His will, He's going to be calling on the others that are already doing His will to help them. That's one thing you got to understand, that one of the biggest purposes of church is so we don't have to walk this walk alone. There are people in here that love you and will walk with you and help you when you give it all to the Lord. And Ananias said, Here I am, Lord. And the Lord said to him, listen to this now. If you're walking in God's will, God's going to ask you to do some crazy things at times. I'm one of the crazy things. He'll ask you. He said to Ananias, Arise, go into the street which is called Straight. Boy, you can't get the better name for a street than that. Some of y'all need to get off of whatever you're walking on and start walking down Straight Street. And inquire of the house of Judas for one called Saul of Tarsus, for behold, he prays. Oh boy, yeah, he's praying now, ain't he? 3 days and nights with no food, no water, and no sight will get you to praying. What's it going to take, people, to get you to pray and to ask for God's will in your life? What is it going to take? Stop repeating the same stupid things over and over and over and over again, and make a new path. Follow the Lord's path. And it said that he has seen in a vision a man named Ananias coming in and putting his hand on him that he might receive his sight. Now Ananias is a logical man. And at first when God asked him to do this, he thought, now Lord, are you sure? Do you know who this man is? Sometimes you'll find yourself questioning God. Well, God, I don't really have any education. I don't have any money. I don't really have the best health in the world. I don't have... Stop it! Stop making excuses. I could line everybody up this morning. We could all have an excuse why we shouldn't serve God. Every one of us. We all got something that the devil has whispered in our ear. You've got to forget all about it. And one thing I have learned in the 27 years of being the pastor of this church, if God calls you, He will equip you. if God opens a door, He will supply the resources to do what He opens the door. You trust Him and watch what He'll do. Watch what He'll do. Many of us have seen it over and over and over again. So Ananias said, Lord, I've heard by many about this man, how much evil he has done to the saints at Jerusalem. God, don't call me to go pray for that scumbag. That's in the Hogtown edition. We're writing a new translation strictly for Hogtown. We're going to be adopting that pretty soon. Don't ask me to go pray for him. You know what that man did? God calls the scumbag to serve Him. Y'all looking for me to point out who the scumbags are, aren't you? He will. I don't care how rotten or how good you think you are. God can use you mightily if you let Him do it. And He don't worry about your past no more. That past is gone. When you give yourself to the Lord, that past is gone. And it better be gone here too. He said, I've heard by many about this man how much evil he's done to your saints at Jerusalem. And now he's got authority from the chief priest to arrest everybody that even call on your name. Listen to the way that Jesus answered him. He says, go thy way, for he is a chosen vessel unto me to bear my name before the Gentiles and kings and the children of Israel. He told Ananias, don't worry about it. You go your way. You go do what I tell you to do. Don't you worry about it. I'll take care of the details. You do what the Lord calls you to do and don't worry about it. He will take care of the details. Many of y'all are already seeing the details in your life being taken care of. Many of you. He's a chosen vessel. Every one of you in here is a chosen vessel of God this morning. You should feel complimented, not put upon. You should be excited that God has chosen you and that He has saved you, and now He wants you to do something for Him. You are being asked to do something for the King of all things. I guarantee you, if you got a phone call from the White House and they asked you to go do an errand for them, you'd hop to it, wouldn't you? Well, you're getting a call from heaven today to go do something for the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords.